By this point in your life, you've heard the superlatives. Between 70 and 75% of Earth's surface is covered with water. Roughly 75% of our bodies are made up of H2O. North America is particularly blessed with the Great Lakes holding a fifth of the world's freshwater supplies. Actually, that last line of water gospel is dead wrong. The Great Lakes hold a fifth of the world's fresh surface water. But all the fresh water we see on the surface, the water in our rivers and our lakes, from the Great Lakes to Lake Okeechobee, is only a tiny fraction of the world's fresh water. Far more water flows beneath our feet in vast aquifers that absorb rain, recharge rivers, and provide half Americans' water supply. Here in the Sunshine State, an aquifer called the Floridan bestows closer to 90% of the water we use for our homes, businesses, yards, and so on. This water workhorse is called groundwater, but it's hard for people to comprehend because we can't see it. It's like trying to comprehend all the information on the internet. But North Florida is one of the few places in the world where we can see into the aquifer. Here, the aquifer has windows, our springs. More than 900 of them bubble forth cool water in whimsical blues, the greatest concentration of freshwater springs anywhere in the world. So they allow a glimpse of what's happening in our aquifer with the help of artists such as the late great underwater photographer Wes Skiles, or by getting wet ourselves. This is the only time I've ever called my son Christ-like. If it's still hard to picture our intimate link to the springs and theirs to groundwater and the aquifer, try thinking of our bright blue springs like the bright blue links on the internet. The hypertext that lets you retrieve information. The bright blue links connect us to the information we need. The bright blue springs connect us to the water that quenches our lives, the groundwater flowing to our faucets and our fruit crops, our latrines, and our landscaping. It is hard to make these human connections in the abstract, the internet, the aquifer, but hypertext and springs are fluent, logical, and inviting entries to an otherwise mysterious realm. We view both as fixed, permanent, unceasing. When we click on hypertext, we have faith in the next link. When we visit our springs or stand under the shower heads they maintain, water jets forth with apparent abundance. This is not the reality. Hypertext and the internet, of course, depend on a complex intellectual ecosystem that runs with the global vigilance of countless individuals. So too, springs and groundwater require the great care of individuals who use it and the governments that manage it. They are not getting that care. Through the lens of my photographer friend, John Moran, I can show you a first magnitude spring that has gone completely dry. I can show you another named Peacock for its formerly flashy blue hue that has turned to an algal brown soup. A far greater calamity than losing the internet, loss of our groundwater and springs is unimaginable for these subterranean ecosystems and the life they provide people and nature, but also for their role in our creative culture, even in our tech economy. In the late 1700s, a naturalist from Pennsylvania named William Bartram journeyed through the American South, sketching places and writing up his impressions with poetic ardor. He was especially entranced by what he found in North Florida in 1774, traveling between the St. Johns River and the Alachua Savannah, what we now call Payne's Prairie. His account of the journey is known as Bartram's Travels. At Manatee Springs, 45 miles to our west, the book describes a grand fountain with astonishing ebullition, water bubbling perpendicular upwards. Bartram also sees spring water shooting up with amazing ebullition at Salt Springs, about 55 miles to our southeast in what is now called the Ocala National Forest. There, he wrote, "The waters are thrown up in such abundance and amazing force as to jet and swell up 2 to 3 feet above the common surface. White sand and small particles of shells are thrown up with the waters." Soon after its publication in 1791, the English poet and philosopher Samuel Taylor Coleridge became enamored with Bartram's travels. He read the book frequently, traveled with it, recommended it to friends, jotted intriguing notes about it in his journals. He dreamed about it as well in a famous opium-inspired slumber from which he awoke to compose one of the most influential poems in the English language. That poem is Kubla Kahn. Coleridge had fallen asleep reading about Xanadu, the summer palace of the Mongol ruler and emperor of China. When he woke, he started to write lines that had come to him in a dream. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alph, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. Literary scholars trace Coleridge's caverns measureless to man to Bartram's descriptions of the springs of North Florida. They've linked Coleridge's sacred river to Salt Springs Run, and they can show how Bartram's buoyant descriptions at Manatee and Salt Springs shape this key section of Kubla Khan. And from this chasm, with ceaseless turmoil seething, as if this earth in fast, thick pants were breathing, a mighty fountain momently was forced, amid whose swift, half-intermitted burst, huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail, and mid these dancing rocks at once and ever, it flung up momently the sacred river, 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion through wood and dale. The sacred river ran, then reached the caverns, measureless to man. Incredibly, indisputably, the springs of North Florida inspired the poem that helped launch the Romantic movement. If only we could see those dancing 18th century springs. Perhaps, with the help of UF Digital Worlds, we can. Perhaps Bartram, so enamored with what he found here, can help us see what we have lost here, the impact of millions of people, pipes, and pumps on the rare aquamarine jewels we were privileged to inherit, and the groundwater that feeds them and us, the resource most vital to daily life ecosystems and economic prosperity in North Central Florida. Not to mention sites of American literary heritage every bit as important as, say, Jack London's ranch in Northern California or William Faulkner's home in Oxford, Mississippi. 150 years after Bartram described the nations of fish swimming up what we now call Salt Springs Run, an American writer holed up in these woods named Marjorie Canaan Rawlings gave the same spring magical importance to the relationship between a boy and his fawn in the novel The Yearling, which won the Pulitzer Prize in 1939. In Florida these days, literature, indeed all humanities, are out of political favor. Gainesville is all about nurturing tech, the types of companies that will bring sustainability and high-paying jobs rather than the booms and busts of a real estate economy, the low-wage service jobs of a tourism economy. The busy little tech companies will need water, of course, but the world's most innovative thinkers thirst for more. They will find it in the spellbinding nature that sent Bartram to writing, set Coleridge to dreaming, got Rawlings to thinking this thought. I do not know how anyone can live without some small place of enchantment to turn to. So remember our metaphor of the bright blue internet links and the springs? In 1960, an American computer networking pioneer named Ted Nelson became enchanted with the problem of how humans could maximize their interactions given the massive amounts of data in the new world of computing. The project he came up with was inspired by a poem called Kubla Kahn. Given the intricacies, the power, and the beauty of the problem at hand, he named his ambitious project Xanadu after the first line of Coleridge's poem. Mysteriously, profoundly, the springs of North Florida cascaded insight from William Bartram's journals to Samuel Taylor Coleridge's famous poem to Ted Nelson's utopian vision for a networked system that would allow all the world's people to share all the world's documents. Nelson's Xanadu helped bring to the forefront an essential technological tool. It gives us previously unimaginable access and depth. It connects us to caverns of information, measureless to man. Ted Nelson named those bright blue connections. He called them hypertext. Thank you.